Imperial Arrow. Go out.
Get out.
Song. Imperial Arrow. Refresh dots. Imperial Arrow. Divine Veil up. Stack. Song, Sidewinder. Imperial Arrows.
Flux box.
Drop Puddle Fart. Raging Strikes. Imperial Arrow.
One's out.
Orange. Refresh dots.
Out.
Imperial Arrow.
Alright,
Big
got
Shadow.
jacuzzi. In a second.
Imperial
What the
Arrow.
fuck ever, dude? Ah, that's so lame.
Refresh dots. Sidewinder. Imperial Arrow. Stack. Imperial Arrow.
Field.
Song. Right side.
Right arm.
Refresh dots. Imperial Arrow. Raging Strikes. Left side.
Left arm.
Imperial
Orange.
Arrow. Refresh dots. Sidewinder. Knockback. Battle Voice. Imperial Arrow. Song. Imperial Arrow. Refresh dots. Imperial Arrow.
East or west.
Song.
East.
Refresh dots. Imperial Arrow.
Fucking idiot.
Sorry.
Hey! Yo!
Sidewinder.
I got damage.
Raging
Yeah.
Strikes.
Oh boy.
Orange. Imperial Arrow. Refresh dots. Imperial Arrow.
Oh no, I picked the wrong side. Y'all were right.
Song.
Conrad.
Imperial
Mom,
Arrow.
Dad.
Refresh dots.
Die, but it's fate worse than death.
Imperial Arrow. Arms length. Sidewinder.
Oh fuck, I didn't see that one.
Song.
Refresh
Imperial
dot.
Arrow.
Shield on Jacuzzi.
Go out.
Touch on the damage done Hingambana. XP inside.
Out.
Raging Strikes. Imperial Arrow. Orange. Refresh dots. Buster Cleave. Imperial Arrow.
Challenge.
Sidewinder. Battle Voice. Imperial Arrow.
Shadows and Tower together.
Song. Right side. Refresh dots.
Right arm.
Imperial Arrow. Left side.
Towers first.
Left arm.
Song. Imperial Arrow. Refresh
Just
dots.
a little further in. Yeah, you're fine. Up into the
Pitch ball.
Imperial
Raging
Arrow. Strikes. Orange. Sidewinder.
Orbs.
Knockback.
You ready for
Refresh
knockback?
Imperial Arrow.
Knockback. Oh, rude. I got it.
Oh, hard.
I will do it after this. Limit break going out.
Song. Refresh dots.
Shackled apart.
Imperial Arrow.
Sure.
Sidewinder. Imperial
Song.
Arrow. Storm Bite. Caustic Bite. Imperial Raging
Arrow.
Strikes. Go out. Imperial Arrow. Storm Bite. Caustic Bite. Song. Orange. Imperial Arrow. Sidewinder. Arm's length. Battle Voice. Caustic Bite. Shadow. Imperial Arrow. Song. Divine Veil Up. Troubadour. Imperial Raging Arrow. Strikes. Refresh dots. Imperial Arrow. Stack. Sidewinder. Imperial
Refresh
arrow.
dots.
Knockback. Song. Barrage. Raging strikes. Imperial arrow. Go out. Song. Imperial arrow. Refresh dots. Imperial arrow. Buster Cleave. Sidewinder. Imperial arrow. Refresh dots. Drop puddle fart. Raging strikes. Imperial arrow. Orange. Imperial arrow. Refresh dots. Bait chat battle voice. Imperial arrow. Song. Sidewinder. Refresh dots. Imperial arrow. Stack. Imperial arrow. Left side. Song. Refresh dots. Imperial arrow. Left side. Raging strikes. Imperial arrow. Orange. Refresh dots. Sidewinder. Battle voice. Knockback. Imperial arrow. Song. Imperial arrow. Refresh dots. Imperial arrow. Song. Imperial arrow. Refresh dots. Sidewinder. Raging strikes. Orange. Refresh dots. Imperial Arrow, Storm Bite. Caustic Bite. Arm's Length. Song. Imperial Arrow. Go out. Imperial Arrow. Song. Sidewind Bite. Imperial Caustic Arrow. Bite. Buster Cleave. Raging Strikes. Imperial Arrow. Orange. Battle Voice. Right side. Imperial Arrow. Song. Imperial Arrow. Right side. Sidewinder. Troubadour. Imperial Arrow. Song. Imperial Arrow. Knockback. Storm Bite. Caustic Bite. Raging Strike. Imperial Arrow. Orange. Imperial Arrow. Sidewinder. Caustic Bite. Imperial Arrow, Song. Imperial Arrow. Refresh dots. Imperial Arrow. Song. Refresh dots. Imperial Arrow. Go out. Raging Strikes. Sidewinder. Orange. Imperial Arrow. Refresh dots. Arm's length. Imperial arrow. Song. Battle voice. Troubadour. Sidewinder. Raging strikes. Barrage.
Game on!
Sí, pero no me faltan 4 veces.
Imperial arrow. Go out. Song. Imperial arrow. Refresh dots. Imperial arrow. Bus lead. Sidewinder. Imperial arrow. Refresh dots. Drop puddle par. Raging strikes. Imperial arrow. Refresh dots. Imperial arrow. Bait shadow. Imperial arrow, song. Refresh dots. Sidewinder. Buster Imperial arrow. Imperial arrow. Song. Right side. Refresh dots. Imperial arrow. Raging strikes. Left side. Imperial arrow. Orange. Storm bite. Sidewinder. Caustic battle voice. Knockback. Imperial arrow. Song. Imperial arrow. Imperial arrow. Storm bite. Caustic bite. Song. Imperial arrow. Sidewinder. Raging strikes. Orange. Song. Refresh dots.
¿Cuántos minutos te faltan?
¿Eh?
¿Cuántos minutos te faltan?
Para.
¿No?
Se supone que 10.
¿Cuánto?
10 se supone. Por.
Para cenar.
Sidewinder. Imperial arrow. Go out. Song. Imperial arrow. Battle voice. Second wind. Refresh dots. Imperial arrow. Song. Buster Sidewinder. Imperial arrow. Drop puddle par. Refresh dots. Raging strikes. Imperial arrow. Orange. Imperial arrow. Bait shadow. Refresh dots. Imperial arrow. Song. Sidewinder. Imperial arrow. Buster cleave. Refresh dots. Divine veil up. Imperial arrow. Song. Right side. Imperial arrow. Refresh dots. Raging strikes. Right side. Imperial arrow. Orange. Sidewinder. Knockback. Imperial arrow. Battle voice. Refresh dots. Song. Imperial arrow. Refresh dots. Imperial arrow. Song. Imperial arrow. Raging strikes. Sidewinder. Refresh dots. Imperial arrow. Orange. Imperial arrow. Refresh dots. Song. Imperial arrow. Imperial arrow. Refresh dots. Sidewinder. Song. Imperial arrow. Raging strikes. Go out. Imperial arrow. Refresh dots. Orange. Imperial arrow. Stack. Imperial arrow. Storm bite. Sidewinder. Caustic bite. Battle voice. Troubadour. Right side. Imperial arrow. Song. Imperial arrow. Caustic side. Imperial arrow. Raging strikes. Orange. Refresh Imperial dots. Arrow. Sidewinder. Knockback. Imperial arrow. Song. Refresh dots. Second wind. Imperial arrow. Imperial arrow. Song. Refresh dots. Imperial arrow. Sidewinder. Raging strikes. Orange. Imperial arrow. Refresh dots. Imperial arrow. Go out. Song. Imperial arrow. Refresh dots. Imperial Sidewinder. Battle voice. Arm's length. Song. Imperial arrow. Refresh bait shadow. Raging strikes. Imperial arrow. Troubadour. Orange. Refresh dots. Imperial arrow. Sidewinder. Song. Raging strikes. Orange. Imperial Arrow. Go out. Song. Imperial Arrow. Refresh dots. Imperial Arrow. Buster Cleave. Battle Sidewinder. Song. Imperial Arrow. Drop Puddle Far. Raging Strikes. Imperial Arrow. Orange. Refresh dots. Imperial Arrow. Bait Shadow. Imperial Arrow. Song. Refresh dots. Sidewinder. Buster Cleave. Imperial Arrow. Imperial Arrow. Left side. Refresh dots. Imperial Arrow. Left side. Raging Strikes. Orange. Imperial Arrow. Refresh dots. Battle Voice. Sidewinder. Imperial Arrow. Song. Imperial Arrow. Imperial Arrow. Song. Fresh dots. Imperial Arrow. Sidewinder. Raging Strikes. Imperial Arrow. Refresh dots. Song. Imperial Arrow. Arm's length. Storm Bite. Song. Imperial Arrow. Go out. Imperial Arrow. Refresh dots. Song. Sidewinder. Buster Cleave. Imperial Arrow. Raging Strikes. Battle Voice. Imperial Arrow. Orange. Right side. Imperial Arrow. Refresh dots. Right side. Song. Imperial Arrow. Troubadour. Sidewinder. Refresh Imperial dots. Arrow. Song. Imperial Knockback. Arrow. Refresh dots. Raging Strikes. Imperial Arrow. Orange. Imperial Arrow. Sidewinder. Refresh dots. Song. Imperial Arrow. Imperial Arrow. Refresh dots. Song. Imperial Arrow. Go out. Imperial Arrow. Raging Sidewinder. Refresh dots. Orange. Imperial Arrow. Battle Voice. Arm's length. Imperial Arrow. Song. Storm Bite. Bait Shadow. Caustic Bite. Troubadour. Sidewinder. Raging strikes. Orange.
Esta es mi poder. ¿Me pongo queso panela? ¿Y ahora por qué huyó otra vez? ¿Desví?
temporada que no sabe hacer un lomo de puerco. Antes que nada, no subí video la semana pasada porque, pues, no sé, se me hizo fácil. Y la verdad como que se me hacía medio absurdo después de que pues no salió nadie en ninguno de los capítulos. Entonces pues me esperé mejor a que salieran 2 capítulos para poder subir este video resumen de los 2 capítulos, de Navidad y Año Nuevo. Y pues bueno, primero vi el capítulo de Navidad, capítulo con bastante amor, un capítulo donde todos nos queremos. Nos dicen, no, pues tienen que hacer un platillo navideño con estos lácteos. Y cuando nos pusieron eso, yo la verdad estaba como, chale, o sea, en mi casa hacemos pues la piernita y así, pero no me acuerdo de algo láctico. Me acuerdo entonces de mi famosísima y deliciosa salsa de cilantro y dije, este es el momento en el que demuestro esos dotes y decido hacer pues mis tamalitos. Estaba muy nervioso en ese momento porque pues sí he hecho tamales, pero no he hecho tamales en Express. Y sí le pensé, dije, esto no tiene nada que ver con Navidad, en mi casa no tenemos tamales para Navidad. Pero pasa la Chef Betty y le digo, o sea, es que también sé que en Estados Unidos comen mucho tamales en Navidad. Quedan como 5 minutos y digo, güey, ya, o sea, en nombre de Dios, le echo una persinada ahí a la olla express. Abro mi olla express, veo mis tamales y, oh sorpresa, habían salido muy bonitos, me quedó muy bien. Digo, mi salsita, pongo un tamalito, pongo otro encima y yo digo, esto no está tan mal. Estos tamalos no están tan malitos. Un momento.
¿Cómo se llamaría tu plato?
No tan malitos. Pasan al frente y la verdad a mí me sorprende muchísimo porque cuando fracasas tanto en la vida, cualquier logro es muy grande, ¿no? Entonces estaba muy contento con ese platillo y bueno, no gané. El reto lo gana mi chica y de repente pues la ponen a armar parejas y no sé ustedes, pero yo ya me la solía, o sea, creo que he visto suficientes temporadas como para no darme cuenta que algo así iban a hacer, ¿no? Que las parejas no eran parejas, que se iban a enfrentar unos con otros. Lo que sí me sorprendió fue cuando le dijeron a mi chica, no, pues tú vas a cocinar con Osvaldo. Yo me acuerdo de la cara de mi chica como de chale, ¿qué? Y bueno, pues pasó, la verdad es que no me gustó mucho mi postre, sí sabía un poco a nada, la verdad, todo sabor, yo estoy consciente de eso. Está chido porque pues ese tipo de cosas te hacen aprender, ¿no? Hay que aprender de los errores. Hemos tenido salir de entrevistas y llega Osvaldo y nos dice, no. Dice, ya me voy. Y nosotros como de, ¿por qué dices eso? Me dice, no, es que hice una manzana con chile, hice una manzana con pulparindo, güey. Y nosotros como de, ¿por qué, güey? O sea, ¿qué pedo, qué pasó? Es que yo no tenía nada que hacer y no sabía qué hacer y de repente me faltaban 10 minutos y Meche me dijo que fuera por una manzana y le puse el pulparindo y todos estábamos cagados de risa porque éramos como de, güey, ¿cómo hiciste una manzana? Lo pasa Osvaldo de Liberación y de repente le va muy bien. Y cuando le empieza a ir, éramos como de, ¿qué? O sea, pero, ¿oh? Y aquí viene mi teoría de lo que pasó. ¿Por qué le alabaron tanto la manzana? Al principio del reto nos dijeron que era un reto con tamarindo. No se nos dijo que era de pulparindo. De hecho, cuando nosotros fuimos al mercado, habíamos agarrado mucho tamarindo. O sea, cada quien tenía como un bonche de tamarindo grandote. Y llegan los de producción y nos dicen, no es tamarindo, es pulparindo. Yo creo que los chefs pensaron que Osvaldo había hecho esa pasta. Como que los chefs no tenían idea de que había sido pulparindo y pensaron que era tamarindo. Eso es lo que yo creo. Porque de hecho en algún momento le dice a Joserra, está muy bien hecha tu pasta. Pensaron que Osvaldo había hecho su pulparindo. Como que yo creo que fue más error de la producción al no ser claros con el reto. Eso es lo que yo creo. Lo que sí me sorprendió bastante fueron las entrevistas. Nosotros no escuchamos lo que dicen los compañeros atrás de cámaras. Entonces lo vemos que los Osvaldito empieza como de, no, pues allá ella, te quiero mucho, negrito, pero tantita humildad, hijo, tantita humildad. Nos vamos a Mandil Negro y nos dicen, van a tener ayuda para este reto, y es el momento que llegan los famosos y nos ponen a elegirlos como si fueran maquinita de dulces. En ese momento yo estaba entre Kika Edgar o Flor Rubio, porque dije, con Flor Rubio puedo ponerme a chismear, pero con Kika Edgar puedo ponerme a cantar. Elijo Kika Edgar y la verdad no pude haber tenido mejor compañía. Me sorprendió muchísimo su actitud. Él estuvo como de, a ver, te ayudo, lo que tú quieras, dime qué hago. Y yo la verdad me estresaba mucho porque yo siempre estuve solo, entonces, o sea, sí, gracias por tu ayuda, gracias, pero de repente ya nomás andaba inventándome favores, así le decía como de, pues ve por un durazno. No sé, sí me ayudó bastante ella, de hecho ella hizo la papa que nos alabaron tanto, no había hecho pavo antes, entonces yo tenía mucho miedo con ese pavo. De hecho, al momento de platar, yo saco el pavo del horno y veo que está rojo y yo volteo a ver a Kika me volteé a ver y me dice, Kika, eso está crudo. Y yo, sí, ¿verdad? Me dice, sí, está crudo. Y en plato nos sacan entrevistas, llegamos a las entrevistas y Kika todavía me dice, ya le dije a los demás que nos fuera de la verga. Y yo, ok, y me dice, no, es que si no estoy bien mal, es que esto está crudo. Y yo, ¿Kika? Y me dice, no, la parte de la papa está salada. Y yo, ¿Kika? Ya, por favor, eso no le digas a los chefs. Pasamos al frente y yo, sorpresa, la papa estaba bien rica. Estaban con el pavo y yo, de repente lo parten y está bien, está cocido. Y yo, sí. Y bueno, ya después de ahí nos dijeron que pues que no había eliminado. Y la verdad es que ya Ya lo suponía porque digo, o sea, era especial de Navidad y aparte íbamos a cocinar con un famoso, no nos iban a correr junto con el famoso, ¿saben? Nos citan en la mesa para la cena de Navidad y de repente vemos a Rubiel solo, y tu compañera, y Bárbara de Regil, ¿dónde está? No, pues no sé, pues como que se puede hacer ejercicio, no sé. Ya cenamos y nos fuimos a descansar. Y al otro día fue cuando se grabó el capítulo de Año Nuevo. O sea, el capítulo de Navidad se grabó el martes y el capítulo de Año Nuevo se grabó el miércoles. Generalmente son 2 días para grabar un solo capítulo, entonces sí estábamos muy cansados ya para el capítulo de Año Nuevo porque aparte el lunes se había ido mi Isabel, el martes fue de Navidad y el miércoles Año Nuevo. ¿Cómo pasó el tiempo tan rápido? El tiempo se va volando. No es ni jueves y ya estamos en el 2021. No entiendo. Llegamos al foro el otro día y no, pues que el reto es hacer unos profiteroles. Yo no tengo idea de lo que son los profiteroles, no los había visto más que en la temporada 2 que hicieron el Croquemush, pero no los había hecho. Entonces estuve muy feliz por haber sacado mis 12 profiteroles. De repente vemos a Osvaldo que dice que tiene 100 y vemos sus masitas y era como de bro, eso no son profiteroles, no seas mamón. Gana Itzel el reto y nos pone en equipos. Como que ya imaginábamos que venía, como que ya pensábamos que venía el Croquemush, entonces obviamente Itzel agarró a los que tenían más profiteroles y los que eran mejores en panadería, ¿no? Volteo a ver a mi equipo y ninguno de nosotros tenía profiteroles decentes. Entonces nos ponen al chef invitado y yo me acuerdo mucho de la cara que hizo el chef invitado. Se nos caía la cara de vergüenza con el chef y el chef ni siquiera nos volteaba a ver. Como que los chefs invitados lo tomaron muy en serio entre ellos, como que era su competencia. La competencia real no era entre nosotros, era entre los chefs invitados. Sofía se portó bien chida, todo el tiempo estuvo trabajando un montón. Te digo que Sofía trabajó más que nosotros porque sí fue real. O sea, el chef de hecho en algún momento se dirigía solo a ella. Entonces la crema inglesa y ustedes pues vean cómo se hace. Perdemos el reto, somos los últimos en entregar el Croquemush. Estamos en el reto de eliminación y nos dicen tiene que ser un lomo de cerdo en 45 minutos. Me hubieran dicho 50 minutos, me hubieran dicho 52 minutos, no me hubiera pasado nada. Yo me bloqueé bastante cuando dijeron 45 minutos. No justificarme ni justificar a mis compañeros, pero sí nos bloqueó mucho eso del tiempo. Yo no tenía idea de cómo iba a ser mi lomo. Y yo me acuerdo mucho que esa vez yo me tardé como 10 minutos en el mercado. Ya llega el Chef Herrera y no tenía nada, o sea, tenía cebolla y zanahoria picada. La verdad que yo estaba muy estresado, muy nervioso porque nos habían hecho pensar que sí iba a salir alguien esta vez. Faltan 5 minutos para terminar el reto, abro mi arroz y no está listo, está crudo. Y mi pensamiento en ese entonces fue, no puedo entregar algo crudo, no puedo entregar un arroz que no está listo. Entonces en Chile me fui por harina de maíz para hacer yo según una gordita. Ya tenía ahí unas cebollitas asadas y nos habían pedido un plato completo. Entonces mi razonamiento fue, aquí está mi plato completo, tiene salsa, tiene proteína, tiene carbohidrato y tiene verdura. Ahí está mi plato completo. Pasan mis compañeros y notamos que a todos nos está yendo mal. O sea, no hay alguien que te salve. Me acuerdo muy bien que esto no lo pasaron en la tele. Yo me acuerdo mucho del regaño de José a Osvaldo. Le digo así, imagínate que Jorge, el que salió en el segundo capítulo, está en su casa viendo esto. O sea, está viendo esto que hiciste. ¿Tú crees que no tiene todo el coraje del mundo al ver que estás desaprovechando la oportunidad de estar aquí? Y nos dice, y esto va para todos. O sea, no solamente para él, todos. ¿Ustedes creen que la gente que hizo casting, que mandó todo, estaría contenta de ver todo lo que están haciendo? Y ahí sí nos pegó a todos, la verdad a todos nos fue mal. Tenía mucho miedo porque dije, ya presenté algo crudo y ya la gente se salió por algo crudo y presentar algo crudo siempre ha estado mal. Ya aprendí la luz. Nos pasan al frente a todos y la verdad en ese momento todos estábamos muy cansados emocionalmente y físicamente también. Sí fue una muestra para nosotros de lo que es trabajar en una cocina profesional, pero vamos, ninguno de los que estamos ahí somos chefs profesionales, o sea, en el momento que nos dicen que no hay eliminado, fue como un descanso, pero al mismo tiempo fue porque ya nos habían dicho que estábamos de la chingada todos, ya nos habían dicho que estábamos mal todos. Cuando nos dicen no hay eliminado, me hubiera importado que hubiera sido yo, pero que hubiera sido alguien, ¿no? Gracias, que les agradece bastante. Pero sí fue interesante. Esto fue todo por el resumen de los capítulos pasados. Y ahora voy a contestar algunas preguntas que me hicieron favor de preguntarme por Instagram. Tengo 26 años. Hola, ¿qué tal? Yo soy David Albiter, participante de la temporada 2020 de MasterChef México. He sido alguien, ¿no? Gracias, se les agradece bastante.
like Sasuke. Just emo as shit.
Eventually.
Okay, wait. What is a rock? Is that some kind of pigeon? Like some kind of duck?
Blessed is he who in the name of charity and goodwill shepherds the weak through the valley of darkness. For he is truly his brother's keeper and the finder of lost children.
The day of 1,000 souls. Yoda has created thee like none other, and we must give him praise this day, on the 1,000th day, a sacred day. For this day, we will recognize the power and the light of our God to elevate those in the darkness into the holy with an orgasmic river of protein donuts for all time. For blessed is his name of the highest deeds.
Goda.
A ver, Goda.
¿Cómo no? No, pues sí. No, nunca vamos a acabar si no nos ponemos, ¿verdad, Gorita? Gorita está de acuerdo. Goda, ahí está.
¿Este celular le pusiste frijoles?
No, pero si quieres le pongo. Ya me acordé que sí les iba a poner. Tú me recordaste. Yo que sí. A ver, suelta acá, ¿no?
Yo tengo una cuchara por ahí. No sé si sirvan.
Pues, ¿cuántos años tiene? Sí lo usan ya mucho.
Welcome back to Unwrapped on Deep Fried. I'm Mark Summers. Cheetos, it's one of the...
No sé qué día me citaron temprano. Creo que haber sido el albero.
snacks that gets its crunch from just
Te
a
la
little
juntas
hot
el
oil
viernes
treatment.
a
And
las
exactly
8,
how are these babies born?
8
Well,
de la noche, 8:30 de la mañana.
Dijiste que en el TEC el jueves. Bueno, el 8 creo que dijimos que era jueves.
¿Es jueves?
Bueno, dijiste el 8. Bueno, no sé, no me acuerdo. Según yo era jueves, pero creo que 8 es viernes.
They are extra crispy and finger looking good. But we're not talking chicken, we're talking Cheetos. This snappy snack was introduced nationally in 1948 and soon became the king of the crunch.
Now we make about 4 million bags of Cheetos a day. That comes out to over 1 billion bags of Cheetos a year.
Even though so many of us eat them, how many of us really know what a Cheeto is? It's actually a corn puff, The crunchy variety is fried while the puffs are baked. At their factory in Frankfort, Indiana, Frito-Lay makes so many Cheetos, it stores the main ingredient, cornmeal, in silos. The Cheetos get cooking as cornmeal mixes with water, creating a batter. The batter moves through a tube to a machine called an extruder. The Cheeto extruder is so top secret, we're not allowed to show it to you, but it's what gives the Cheeto its unique shape.
As the cornmeal is passing through our extruders, it builds heat as well as pressure, and that's what makes it pop into the collet shape.
A collet is the technical term for an uncooked Cheeto. At this point, the collet is a pale yellow color, like the corn is made from, and has the consistency of a rice cake. The collets ride a conveyor to the fryer, where they are cooked to more than 300 degrees.
When we first make the Cheeto coming out of our extruders, it does not have that crunchy texture that people have come to love. It doesn't take on that crunchy texture until after it passes through our frying operation.
But wait, what about the cheese?
Well, to make Cheetos, we use about 12 million pounds of aged cheddar cheese a year. And that cheese is mixed with oil and some other seasonings and then applied to the Cheetos.
The cheese is what gives Cheetos their distinctive bright orange color. It's also a shade that tends to stick to fingers, something Cheeto lovers really don't seem to mind.
People actually like to lick that cheese powder off their fingers.
A sea of super cheesy Cheetos then moves towards bagging. Along the way, trapdoors open up on the conveyor, dropping the Cheetos into weight check machines that measure the perfect amount for each bag. The bags themselves are wound on a spool and thread through a filling machine. Each bag is sealed at the bottom, filled from the top, and then sealed shut. An astonishing 40,000 pounds of Cheetos are made every hour. That's enough to keep Chester cheese crunchy.
I'm just a cool dude.
And here's a fun fact for you. Chester is actually related
¿Ya has
to
pensado hasta qué edad vas a poder seguir jugando?
Well, people might.
¿Has pensado hasta qué edad vas a poder seguir jugando?
¿Hasta qué hora?
¿Hasta qué edad?
Hasta que muera.
¿Sí?
Quiero que me entierren con una consola.
Yo creo que cuando tengas 50, 60 años vas a seguir jugando.
No, Chester was brought to life by the same artist who came up with the Pink Panther.
¿Ya tomaste ponche?
Ahí lo tengo. Este te va a gustar.
Walt Disney's Disneyland.
When Disneyland opened its doors, the founder wanted to create an unforgettable experience. He wanted it to feel like the American dream, bursting with energy, optimism, and innovation. Little did he know, it would be part of the legacy behind one of America's most beloved snacks, before skyrocketing to over $1 billion in sales.
¿Te gustó?
It was considered garbage and tossed away in Disneyland's trash. In the early 1930s, Charles Elmer Doolin was about to lose his family's business, the Highland Confectionery in Santa Fe. Sales went down after their ice cream lost its quality. It was beyond Charles's control since the companies that made mistletoe ice cream in Dairyland got into a price war, so Charles decided to diversify into other products. He came up with countless ideas but realized they were either not feasible or unique. Even more devastating was the height of the Great Depression. The loss of sales coupled with the country's economic conditions led to the business being in its worst financial shape. To survive, Charles considered moving to Houston to work for a popsicle company, but he changed his mind after discovering a street vendor at a gas station. The vendor was owned by a man from Oaxaca named Gustavo Urquin. Using a handheld potato ricer, he made corn chips with massive flour that was deep fried in corn oil and salted. Charles ended up working for Gustavo as a fry cook and soon discovered something that would change his life. While the corn chips were popular and sold at many lucha libre arenas, Gustavo wasn't happy. He longed to return to Mexico and teach soccer again, so he made the decision to put out an ad and sell the business for $100. Charles was hooked on the corn chips and considered them a gold mine. He wanted to buy the business but didn't have that kind of money lying around. Fortunately, his mother believed it would be successful, so she pawned her wedding ring for $80 and gave it to Charles. Gustavo then told Charles he could pay him the remaining $20 later. After purchasing the business, Charles called the corn chips Fritos. He started making them in his mother's kitchen with her and the rest of the family's help. In his Model T Ford, he drove all over the Midwest to convince store owners to sell them. It was a hard sell since Fritos was just one of many corn chips available. Charles even got a job as a late-night cook just to have enough money to return home. Eventually, Fritos' sales started to pick up, and Charles and his family struggled to keep up with the They used handheld potato ricers to make them, which was a long and tedious process. That's when Charles started thinking like a true entrepreneur. Since he and his brother knew a lot about mechanical engineering from their father, they decided to make a machine with a hammer to mass produce the Fritos. By the 1950s, Charles moved operations from his mother's kitchen to her garage, and then the house next door. He later opened 2 manufacturing plants in Dallas and Tulsa and invented new products and procedures. Inspired by the founder of Ford Motor Company, Henry Ford, the manufacturing plants were modernized by adding an assembly line and conveyor belt. Charles also started growing his own strain of corn. He hired farmers throughout Texas to plant different varieties until he found the right taste. It became the secret ingredients in Fritos that helped the company expand. Still, Charles wasn't satisfied. He wanted to do more than fill households with his products. He wanted to open his own restaurant. Not just anywhere, but inside the happiest place on earth. Disneyland. Right after Disneyland opened, Charles managed to convince the founder of Disneyland to let him open a restaurant in Frontier. Walt gave him the green light in exchange for corporate sponsorship. The restaurant was called Casa de Fritos. It served the fusion of Mexican and American cuisine and Frito inventions, including their famous Frito chili pie. Unfortunately, Charles never got to see how the Frito company would continue to grow. He passed away just 4 years after opening Casa de Fritos. His daughter Kalida Doolin and others have since revealed that Gustavo wasn't the only one who planted the seeds for his company's legacy, including the birth of Doritos. Aside from Charles' family and employees, others played an even bigger part in maintaining a Mexican tradition and pursuing their own American dream. Some of their stories date back to before and after Charles' time.
Dije que mañana hacemos mole de olla, ¿no? ¿Cómo?
In 1896, a Mexican-American businessman named Jose Bartolome Martinez opened the first massive flour mill in the U.S. While it was an immediate success, Jose wasn't satisfied. He was persistent about making a product that would make it easier to make masa, which was used to make tortillas and tamales. It nearly drove him into debt. Years later, it finally paid off. Jose managed to create dehydrated corn flour where anyone could add water to it and masa would emerge. Jose trademarked it as tamalina. Tamalina was a groundbreaking invention that lifted a heavy burden for Mexican women. They were expected and accustomed to making masa the Asian way, as the indigenous people in Mexico and Central America did. It involved shucking corn, leaving it to soak overnight, and grounding the flattened blanched kernels in a metate. All of this required getting up hours before sunrise. By the 1900s, Jose opened a new factory that could make 60,000 pounds of tamalina and 60,000 pounds of fresh masa per day. Since it used a new production process, it was difficult to estimate the volume of masa needed each day, which created leftovers. Rather than throw it out, Jose decided to use it to make corn chips. He settled on a triangle shape with a medium thickness so that it could be used with dips. He was the first person to commercialize corn chips and suggest that restaurants serve them with guacamole, salsa, or bean dip. Many who claim to have been the originator of the first commercial corn chips were actually copying a product that was already on the market. Jose's many genius ideas paved the way for others to pursue their own American dream, including a man from Sonora named Alex Morales. By 1906, Alex and his wife made a living by selling tamales from Hawaii. They later expanded the business into a restaurant and then a tamale factory called Alex Foods. It was only 10 minutes up the street from Disneyland. By the 1950s, Alex Foods had a fleet of 32 shiny trucks that delivered their tamales and other food products across Southern California. They also won a contract to service many of the restaurants within Disneyland, including Charles Casa de Fritos restaurant. 1 year after Charles passed away, a salesman from Alex Foods saw leftover tortillas in Casa de Fritos' trash. He walked up to the cook and suggested that he fry them up and make tortilla chips instead of throwing them out. At the time, Casa de Fritos served complimentary Fritos instead of tortilla chips with their customers' meals. They never thought of offering tortilla chips instead, as the authentic Mexican restaurants did. The cook took the salesman's advice. After adding his own unique blend of seasoning, it tasted much different than a typical tortilla chip. When the customers tried it, they were hooked. Casa de Fritos added them to the menu as a regular item without telling the Frito company. 1 year later, the Frito company merged with H.W. Lay and Company and was renamed to Frito-Lay. Their four main products were Fritos, Cheetos, Lays, and Ruffles. Together, they brought in $127 million in revenue. It wasn't until Frito-Lay brought in an outsider that the revenue grew to billions. That outsider was the VP of Marketing, Arch West. He not only took Frito national, but also discovered the tortilla chip. In 1914, Arch was born to Scottish immigrants in Indianapolis. His father passed away when he was still very young, leaving his mother to care for him and his brother alone. As a domestic worker, she struggled to feed or clothe them, so she made the difficult choice of sending them to an orphanage. After high school, Arch attended Franklin College on a scholarship to study business. He graduated in 1936 and then served in the Navy in the Pacific during World War II. When Arch returned from the war, he worked as a traveling salesman and then later a Madison Avenue advertising manager.
Even though he grew up in an orphanage, he was not risk averse. He moved from job to job and did well along the way, but it certainly wasn't because he was a great solver of formulas. He just had a good sense of what people might like and might be willing to spend their money on.
By 1960, Arch started working for the Frito-Lay company in Dallas as their VP of marketing. From New York, he was the first outsider they brought in, and his colleagues made sure he knew.
He was a proponent, every once in a while somebody has to take a beating in their life they don't deserve, so he got beat up early on because he thought different. He just persevered.
2 years into the job, Arch took his wife and 3 kids on a trip to Southern California. While driving, he spotted a tiny Mexican shack on the side of the highway between Los Angeles and San Diego. Curious, he pulled over and ordered a small container of tortilla chips. It was like nothing he had ever tasted before and had a punch to them. Besides shape, the crunch was the biggest factor that made them different from Fritos. Fritos were fried pieces of cornmeal, where tortilla chips were baked before frying, making them crunchier. Arch started thinking about what could be done with tortilla chips. If the Frito company made it a substrate, different flavors could be added. They could then target different market segments by creating local favorite flavors, which was difficult with Fritos. Tortilla chips just might be Frito-Lay's next big thing, Arch thought to himself. When he returned to work, he gathered his fellow executives in a boardroom and pitched his idea. Why would Americans want tortilla chips when they already had perfectly good corn chips, they argued. They were concerned that Arch's idea would eat up Fritos and Cheetos market by taking away from their sales. Their instructions were clear. Do not pursue tortilla chips.
When he first presented the idea to the Frito board, remember this was the only guy in the room who was not drawling in the Texas drawl. They said, that's not a very good idea because it's cannibalized Frito sales.
Arch was so confident about his idea that he secretly funneled his own money to an off-site facility to develop his concept. Afterwards, he tested the market in San Diego. He also came up with a new plan for a second pitch. He would not only hand his colleagues samples, but market them as being more than just tortilla chips. They were Doritos, a name that he had already received approval for. 2 years earlier, Arch traveled to Mexico City to trademark Fritos with the company's legal department. Their application was denied. It was considered too generic since Fritos just meant fried in Spanish. Instead of packing his bags and leaving, Arch decided to stay. We might as well try to invent something else that goes with Cheetos and Fritos, he thought to himself. Arch started thinking about how the color of Fritos was considered gold more than anything else. Sensing that would give him a head start, he asked someone what gold was in Spanish. Oro, they told him. Arch felt it had potential, but it was missing something, so he asked what little was in Spanish. Ito. The two words paired together made him think of the letter D, and that it would work well in the beginning. That's how he came up with the name Doritos, meaning little pieces of gold. When Arch made his second pitch, he told his colleagues, "Remember that idea you hated? Well, I had the chance to dust off my resume in case you don't like it. But I did a quick test and it dropped off the shelves and didn't move the needle at all in Fritos sales." Finally, Arch was given the green light. But after launching, Arch realized he had more convincing to do. Doritos sold decently in the Southwest, where people knew the pointed tip could easily scoop globs of dip, whereas the rest of America didn't know what to make of them, especially since they sounded Mexican but didn't taste Mexican. Arch refused to give up. He even suggested a riskier idea. Make Doritos taste like a taco, he instructed. His colleagues laughed and told him, "That's not a flavor, that's a thing." "Of course it's a thing. You know that, I know that, but there's 97% of the United States that doesn't know that," Arch argued. His colleagues didn't understand the possibilities of flavor technology, which had become more advanced by then. Arch was one step ahead. He knew the flavor of a taco could be added to a tortilla chip and pushed the company to experiment. They gave in to his demands and launched taco-flavored Doritos a few years later. It not only won over Arch's colleagues, but the rest of America. It also paved the way for even more iconic flavors, nacho cheese and Cool Ranch.
One of the things that my father demonstrated to me was to just keep on working. Eventually, you can outlast the other guy. Just don't stop. And he was a competitor that way.
By 1991, Doritos became the biggest selling line of Frito-Lay products, bringing in $1.2 billion in revenue. The nacho cheese flavor accounted for more than 60% of Doritos sales. In 2013, Frito-Lay partnered with Taco Bell to release the Doritos Locos Taco. It sold at the rate of 1 billion a day and became one of the most successful fast food franchises of all time. To this day, Frito-Lay has yet to share the real story behind how Arch pushed for the launch of Doritos.
They own any of the IP that he created. But, yeah, they don't want to, I think, be seen as not having seen the opportunity. It comes down to if you know what you're doing is right, go and ask permission. And he knew what he was doing was right, so he was like, he asked permission, but then permission really ran that race did it anyway. And then, took the risk himself and it paid off.
This is the story of how a Mexican tradition and the pursuit of the American dream led to creating one of the country's most beloved snacks. For
No.
What a perfect place for some culture. I like that placement. What a perfect place for some culture.
Shit. The world's going to tear us apart when the word gets around. Access granted. Please provide your destination.
Bring up district analytics.
Increased NCPD presence and activity has been reported in Haywood. No official statement has been forthcoming. Intercepted radio communications suggest MaxTech has been sent to the area. A widespread power failure has been reported in Santo Domingo. All other districts exhibit activity within expected parameters.
Destination, Lizzie's bar.
Noted. En route.
This is N54 News broadcasting with a breaking story for you. A conference of the European Space Council screeched to a grisly halt following a failure in a neural stabilization system. 5 European Space Council members are dead, while 3 remain in critical condition. Authorities are still looking into what might have caused this shocking incident. The council members were all wearing Biotechnica-provided devices. The corporation's representatives have, as yet, refused to comment. Our reporter is on the scene. We'll have updates on developments as they come to light. Stay with N54 News for the latest.
Yes? We weren't scheduled to connect until the end of the week.
Quantified Satori received notification of a somewhat troubling biometric reading. I felt I should call. Is everything in order?
Dealing with a temporary nuisance. Nothing you should worry about.
Just think back to our last session. The neuromotor relaxation exercises 3 times a day. They'll soothe and lift your spirit. I know this.
Sure, okay. See you later.
Designated landing site has been detected at the destination.
Find a spot close to the bar. As close as you can. Fuck procedures.
Initiating landing sequence based on new parameters.
Your problem, Psycho Sue? This looked like a landing pad to you? Could have fucking crushed us. Jesus Christ. Okay, no, hey, we ain't looking for no beef with you. Leave me alone.
Seems trouble once in.
What is happening?
Keep an eye on the AV for me, will ya?
I don't get paid to do that.
I wasn't asking. And not a scratch on it when I get back.
Welcome to Lizzie's.
This is your destiny. This is your destiny. This is your destiny. So
You don't come here often, do you? It's good to see you, chica. Now sit down and tell me what's got your shorts in a knot.
It's good to see you too, Jack.
Yeah, no, honey. Let me hear.
Jackie. Serious.
So could I. Remember?
I know. You saved my ass.
But it did.
Data. What?
Won't come cheap.
Got. situation. This
Gracias, mami. Double tequila.
to this.
Was that a toast? You raise a glass. This job.
Think I have a choice?
Well, let him. I don't know about.
Maybe someday.
You'll always. Hey, you lost?
V.
Did Jenkins send you?
You don't. Jenkins is...
No.
Your access to company networks is hereby revoked. In 2 minutes, any company cybernetics in your possession will give us the data you receive. That is the date. We.
Need.
No. Think.
Hey. Or.
TT policy's gone, Jack. So are my bio.
You sure you?
Get.
I'd say you couldn't say no to him. Besides.
About to say.
That. Hey. V! Hey, hermana. Your new life. It starts now.